21st Century Man. There is a lot to unpack there. So 21st Century Man actually started whilst I was halfway through writing another song that we have lined up called Something Real. And when I was writing the bridge, I got caught up sort of playing this chord progression that was just sort of chromatically rising from one chord to the next. And I became really fascinated with it. And so after just taking these chords, I was hit by the idea of writing a song about dating applications, because I thought that it would match very well with sort of Kenny's journey to reconnect. So when I built the song, I first took it to Hot Chocolate, and we sat and we messed around with the chords together, and very quickly we wrote the guitar lines, and we instantly got the vibe that we wanted this kind of sort of poppy vibe with a light sort of digital edge to it, which is very exciting because as the Upsides, we've always been quite an acoustic sounding band. So for us to move in this more technologically driven direction is exciting because it's all new territory. I took the piece to rhyme, and then we experimented with a bunch of different like drum styles. At first I wanted to try a little bit of Stevie Wonder, and I think it was because I was trying to nail that lightly swung feel whilst also getting it to still feel like quite dancey. And Ryan's a machine, so after like sort of 10 minutes of experimentation, we had a pretty solid basis for what we were going for. Then the next step was to take it to Joe, and I created a demo on Pro Tools, and I sent him the bass line, and he basically went away for a few days, and then when he came back, he had just sort of added on all of these like lovely little flourishes, little sidelines, and a bit of sort of, you know, slap bass and slides, and it just gave it this whole new energy that drove it forward and just gave it that sort of groovy kind of vibe. The hardest thing, I think, was actually what to do with Nathan, because even though we had this sort of sense of that there would be pads and melodies, I'd sort of not quite worked out what we were going to do with the sort of melodica and accordion combo. In the end, we actually ended up basically removing it altogether, which meant that Nathan was sort of forced into a completely different instrumental realm that we don't usually explore as the band, which was very exciting.
Get that slap down still, like down in the mix. It's still a bit intrusive.
When we got into the studio, it became very apparent that unlike some of the other songs that we've got, this one relied quite heavily on the production element. So there was a lot of pulling things down to their individual components and simplifying parts. We rewrote the bass line once we were actually there, because we found very quickly that what may work in a live setting may not necessarily work when you're in the studio. And for the most part, we actually found that a lot of things were probably too complicated, so there was a lot of taking things out. And I guess that's part of the nature of sort of more pop music anyway, is that sometimes less is better, but each of those components has to be absolutely essential. So once we'd laid down the foundations in the studio, there were two other big components that we needed to make the song. And that was firstly the brass, and then the vocoder. Now with the brass we had Jack and we had Bill, and that combination of trumpet and saxophone just sort of blended together so nicely, and it gave the main sort of melodic riff that keeps recurring in the song, just gave it that edge, that power, that drive that pushes the song forward. And then the vocoder was the last component of the song that we added on, because we'd laid everything out, and we listened to it and we were going, it's good, but it's missing something. And then it became very obvious that because the whole composition is about the push and pull effect between human relationships and digital relationships, that having a bit more of a robotic element sort of embedded into the sound really like lifted it up. So I nicked Nathan's vocoder, which ironically I'd actually been messing around with in my own time. Just basically whenever he wasn't in the house, I'd sneak into his bedroom and I'd start just singing whatever came to my mind at any given time. Anyway, we took it into the studio, and I kept improvising sort of lines and vocal harmonies that sort of shadowed the main melody, and the vast majority of what was on the final track was actually from those improvised takes. This song is probably going to have quite an interesting reception because of the theme of being critical and frustrated at technology, and in a time where we are more isolated than we've ever been, I'm guessing that people are probably going to say, but technology is a good thing. And the song isn't necessarily agreeing or disagreeing with that, because in spite of the fact that we know that technology is a great thing and does connect people, it can also be the source of a lot of frustration. And I think that even though having the practicality of the technology there, those feelings are still very real, because it's quite hard to communicate with people through a screen. It's not the same as being able to talk to someone face to face, and we all spend so much time absorbed in our digital lives that sometimes it makes it harder to live our lives in the real world, which is sort of the paradigm that gets pulled back and forth in this song.